My name's Dr. David Tuffley. I'm a lecturer in SocioTechnical Studies at Griffith University. We live with technology and it impacts on us every day. And it's so pervasive that we almost forget that it's there a lot of the time, and yet it is there and it's shaping us, it's affecting us, it's part of our life. And I'm very interested in how people live with technology. I have a background in anthropology and in psychology, so that's all about getting people and technology working comfortably, happily together.
Hello, I'm Alan Metcalfe and this is Conversations on Safe Worlds TV, coming to you from our studios on the beautiful Gold Coast in sunny Queensland, Australia. In this conversation I'm talking with David Tuffley, Dr. David Tuffley of Griffith University in Brisbane, Australia. Dr. Tuffley is a senior lecturer in the School of Information and Computer Technology at Griffith. He's also a senior consultant with the Systems and Software Quality Institute. That's a technology transfer agency for software engineering best practice. Dr. Tuffley has a particular interest in artificial intelligence and in the ethics involved in the development of artificial intelligence, and it's our joint interest in this subject that brings us together, and we hope makes an interesting conversation for you to listen into. Dr. Tuffley, David, thank you for being with us. Thank you for making the time.
It's a great pleasure, Alan. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's our pleasure. I'm excited about this. I think it's got great potential for us to talk about, and I know I've got a lot of friends who'd like to listen to what you've got to say, and hopefully I've got the good questions to prompt you, and we can have a great discussion. David, you don't mind me calling you David? I don't want to
that's fine. I
don't want to be too formal, but I'd like people to be relaxed as they listen to this. In this conversation, you know, you and I have had lots of interesting discussions over the years, and this is a different subject. There's no precedence. It's really uncharted ground, and we're all searching, we're all looking, we're all learning, and so it's not too difficult to have different views and so on. Can I get you started on the subject of ethics and computers, because I know this is a particular area of interest of yours. Can you tell us from your perspective what that's all about?
Sure. Well, yeah, in broad terms, what I'm interested in is the way people use technology, and basically the technology should be there to help people to live their lives in a more satisfying, in a fuller way. You know, you could probably go to the point of saying good technology is what helps people reach their full potential as a human being. Now, not all technology that we live with lives up to that high standard. Quite a lot of it is, it's okay, but it could be better. Then there's technology that's, downright harmful, but I wouldn't even say that that's necessarily a bad thing, because it's really up to people the way they use it. So, if we're talking about the ethics of IT, I would say that what you should use it for is to do no harm. You shouldn't harm anybody in the process of using it. And if people are using that technology, then they should be aware of what impact it's going to have on them. In other words, you should get their informed consent as to, what will happen to them through the use of that technology. So it's a very broad thing, and it's leading us very much towards the whole artificial intelligence end of things.
Right.
That's the sharp end of the spear, so to speak. That's where a lot of action is going on these days in that whole AI and robotics field. And what we're seeing coming along in that field is very exciting indeed. There is a lot of work happening in the US, happening in Japan, parts of Europe also. Very interesting things going on, and I've been happy to be involved over the years with at the edges of a safe world to see it coming along on its journey.
Right, David, can I ask you a point, really, for me, it's an important question. What is the responsibility? Stephen Hawking said this could be the breakthrough. If this is the breakthrough, if we all of a sudden, whoever finds true AI, as I call it, based on human intelligence, this is the holy grail that we're all searching for. It could be the biggest breakthrough in history. He qualified that, however, by saying it depends on who controls it, which to me is an ethical issue. What responsibility? Because I have this discussion with investors and others at times, and they say, Alan, get this thing to the market as quick as you can, let's make money. What responsibility do people like me who are developing AI, researching, if we find AI and it is this key that Hawking is talking about, what responsibility do we have?
Well, the responsibility is pretty clear in my view. As I was just mentioning, technology should benefit people. It should not harm them. So that's a very broad statement. And so there's any number of ways that you can use technology to benefit. So with something like SafeWorld, for example, or some other artificial intelligence that exists out there, it's important that the way it is used is responsible, socially responsible, and that that it contributes to an improvement in the quality of people's lives in some way. And so that's a very broad statement. So, for example, if you have a system that allows people to connect with other people in the world in order to trade things that they might have, and to be able to facilitate people earning a living in a world where employment is becoming harder and harder to find in the conventional way, then that's an example of a technology that is helping to improve somebody's quality of life.
Yeah,
I'm very interested in this. Yes, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, David. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say that I'm very interested in the whole area of, well, as more jobs are automated, what are people going to do in the future? What are our kids going to do for jobs? What's the economy going to look like in a decade from now or 20 years from now, when that trend towards automation has gone to the point where there are a lot of people out of work for no great fault of their own? They want to work, but they are unable to find the sort of work they want. Well, the way I see things, it's really coming down to using technology to create prosperity, to create the sort of opportunities to make money, to earn a living, an honest living that people need. And this should be location independent. It could be wherever that person happens to be. So, for example, I'm speaking to you from my home, which is about 80 kilometres from where you're sitting. effectively we're sitting in the same room talking to each other, and that's a benefit of this technology that we're using right now. Using technology to help people make a living, to earn money, to benefit their community is really, I think, a good way to move forwards in the world. So this is one reason why I think SafeWorld has potential, is that it does offer that ability to do business, to trade, to earn money on the web, and but to do so in a secure way.
Can we stop there? Can we stop there, please, David? We need to wind up there and take a break. Can you hold for a second? We'll come back and continue this conversation. I'm Alan Metcalfe, and I'm talking this morning with Dr. David Tuffley from Griffith University about artificial intelligence.
I just think it's a great time to be alive and a great time to be a technologist, because far from it being scary and the world is changing and none of us are going to have a job in the future, quite the opposite. Some jobs that people don't necessarily want to do anyway will become increasingly automated, but the technology will create whole new categories of employment. There is so much opportunity in the IT world. There's all the usual things like programming and database management and networks and things like that, all the conventional things. But there are all these new areas like big data and data mining and analytics, which that's just one thing, but so many things are opening up all these new careers. And it's almost at the point where someone with enough imagination can create their own job by looking at what can be done and doing it and showing others that, well, this is something you can do. And if it creates advantage or creates value for an employer, then they can get employed by them.
Hello, I'm Alan Metcalfe, and I'm back speaking with Dr. David Tuffley about artificial intelligence and ethics in computers. And Dr. Tuffley is with Griffith University. Dr. Tuffley, David, if I can keep calling you David. David, what we've seen is recently 1,000 of the world's leading scientists came together, and I think it was in Argentina, and they signed a declaration, a piece of paper voicing their concern about AI and where it was going and so on. What's caused this growing concern now, whereas we all know that artificial intelligence has been around for 20 years. It's 20 years ago that Deep Blue from IBM beat Gary Kasparov playing chess, but all of a sudden everybody's worried about AI. What's the difference?
Yeah, we've been hearing about this for a while now. there's a big difference between the sort of artificial intelligence that you see in robots that, say, build cars or do any number of repetitive tasks. They do it well, they do it accurately, they do it cheaply. That's called specific AI. But what we've come to be seeing and be talking about lately, and what those people are worried about, is the development of general AI, which is the way that you would describe a human. Human intelligence is general intelligence in the sense that we're able to go out into the world, interact with it, solve problems, find our way from A to B, deal with any number of unforeseen things that happen that we haven't been specifically programmed to do, but we figure it out because we've got general intelligence. Now, general AI is AI that has learned to emulate the human way of doing things closely enough that it can solve those problems too. So what the experts are concerned about is that when it reaches the point that it's so smart that it may come to realise that it doesn't need humans around, or indeed that humans are inefficient in the process and should perhaps be gotten rid of. Now, that to me is not a realistic outcome. It assumes that there have been absolutely no safeguards built into that AI in the first place that would prevent it from happening. And, the people who are saying this are very smart people. And I think what they're really saying is they're lobbying governments to put into place laws and regulations that will oblige all people who are developing AI to build in those ethical safeguards so that these robots don't turn around and kill us all. So, there's a little bit of politicking going on there. I think it has to be taken with a grain of salt. But essentially, in a couple of decades, we might be at the point where an AI is absolutely indistinguishable from a human being in its ability to, solve problems and walk and talk and, do all of those things.
They project it to be somewhere around about the year 2030, 2029, and I don't actually think anybody can really predict what it will look like. I'm sure it's coming, but I don't think we're going to know what it's going to be like until it arrives. Now, that shouldn't scare people. I know some people are going to be a bit frightened about what the world will be like when that happens, but no, I think it's going to be a really, really interesting time.
Yeah, well, Kurzweil from Google is saying, I think his prediction is something like 2049 or something, I don't know, 2029 or 49, but it's not that far away, really, when machines could have this capability. Do you agree with those sort of projections?
Yes, well, what he is saying there is that the singularity, this what he calls the singularity, which is when computing technology has reached this exponentially large degree of capability, it grows exponentially, that it will become well, no one's quite sure what it will become. It'll be some sort of threshold point that it's crossed. Now, Kurzweil is not a man given to hyperbole. He is considered to be probably the most accurate futurist around, because he bases his predictions on quantitative analysis. He looks at the numbers. He doesn't just look at a crystal ball and make his best guess. He is actually, basing it on data that he's collected and then extrapolated into the future. So he's likely to be correct with that sort of time frame. It may be a little sooner, it may be a little later. But having said that, many of the other big names in AI research, their estimates vary, but 30, 40, 50 years is when they are talking that sort of time frame for this true AI, as you call it, that general AI, I would call it, is likely to be seen. Now, that doesn't allow for breakthroughs in the meantime. It doesn't mean it can't happen before then, but it just means if things continue the way they're going, that's about when it should happen.
Yes, well, as you know, David, my position is we've made the breakthrough. The challenge that I face, of course, is to convince the world of that, and I understand that challenge. There's two approaches, and I want to talk to you about those two approaches when we come back. We're going to have to take another break, but I'd like to talk to you about the two approaches. For me, it's about the mind. It's about, I believe that an invisible mind exists that has always existed, if you like, a God or a creator that's caused us to, and that is the source of intelligence, if we can understand that source. And I believe it's mathematical. I believe it's all tied in with mathematics, and I'd like to just open that subject up, and let's touch on it when we come back. I'm Alan Metcalfe. Please stay with us. Hello, I'm Alan Metcalfe, and we're back talking with Dr. David Tuffley from Griffith University in Queensland, Australia, and we're talking about artificial intelligence and ethics with computerization. Just before the break, Dr. Tuffley raised the subject of the singularity, and I told him about what he knows about my work and the difference when we talk about general artificial intelligence. I come from the belief that that intelligence is universal. It's our creator. Our intelligence creates us, and our purpose in life is to become increasingly intelligent, and that's what I believe is built in to the self-protection, the survival instinct that's built into the law, what I call the law of thought. I'm conscious, however, that there's two trains of thought, and this is really what I'd like to catch up on with Dr. David Tuffley now. David, the source of AI is the question. All the major research is really based on the brain, and does the brain evolve? Does it learn over time? Or is there a mind? And when I talk of a mind, I'm talking about a natural law, a law of thought, as George Boole suggested. Is there a law of thought that is the singularity? It is the creator of everything. And if we can understand that law, we can understand intelligence and the built-in protections that are already there that will protect us if we understand this law. That's where I'm coming from. I know others believe that it's going to evolve over time. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that is the really big question, in psychology, in cognitive science, in philosophy, in artificial intelligence. Everyone is asking, what is this thing called consciousness? What gives us a mind? How does that actually happen? And, well, opinion is divided. Very few people will be bold enough to say that they know what consciousness is. But, to give you an idea of what I'm talking about here, science tells us that the human brain is the most complex structure ever to have existed on this planet, the human brain. And the fact that we're able to think with the mind that we have, we need a brain of that complexity in order to have that level of thought. But of course, other sentient creatures that live on this planet, the dogs and the other intelligent but not as intelligent as we are, they have brains that are not as complicated, and it seems that the level of consciousness that something has is dependent on the complexity of its brain. But here's where it gets interesting. From a philosophical point of view, you could argue that the same thing animates us all, the same essence or the same informing principle or whatever you want to call it. It's been called many things, but that when it inhabits a human mind, it is, it behaves the way it does in humans. When it inhabits a dog's mind or a chimpanzee's mind, it behaves in a characteristic way. So to return to your question, I think there is a strong argument to say that there is a simple underlying essence that is responsible for it all, which I've heard you describe as the law of thought. And that's as good a term for it as any that I've heard, and there are many names for this. So we are, getting into deeply philosophical territory here, and there is no consensus about this in the scientific community, none at all, really. It's it's a huge question.
Well, for me, David, that's the opportunity. That's my opportunity, right? So if there was consensus, if everybody understood this, there'd be nothing for us to look for. There'd be nothing for us to talk about, right? So I'm happy for that situation to exist. People say, well, nobody agrees with you, Alan. Well, that's wonderful. Because if they all agreed with me, I wouldn't have this huge opportunity. But let me suggest to you that I appreciate the complexity and the beauty of the brain. But I also agree with Newton, Isaac Newton, who said it was inconceivable for him that brute matter, in other words, a piece of meat like the brain, no matter how complex and beautiful it may be in its design, could do anything without an outside influence. It has to have a purpose, which I think you've just touched on, where you talk about different things having different purposes. And our purpose is different to that of a monkey or any other animal. We've all got the same basic intelligence, but our purposes are different. Does that make sense?
Oh yes, yeah, I follow your reasoning there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if we take it to its next logical stage and ask, can you then emulate that principle in a computing environment, then I can't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to. In fact, and you maintain that this is what you have done. And in the demonstrations that I've seen, I saw nothing that disproved that. So, it is good to be at the edge of what people think is possible, and then to cross over that edge and go where people haven't been before. So that's the challenge ahead of us. And so I repeat, I don't see why it wouldn't be possible to bring it all down to a very basic algorithm that says, okay, this is how thought goes. This is the process of thought, and this is how we learn. This is how we as humans, we exist in the world, and we learn and we become functional in the world. I don't see why that couldn't happen in an artificial intelligence sort of way. And in fact, I'm sure many others would agree with that, and they're working towards achieving that very thing.
Dr. David Tuffley, thank you very much for giving us your time. That's a great position for us to stop this conversation this morning, and let's do this again. I hope we can. There's lots and lots of things for us to talk about. So thank you again. I hope we can get back together and continue this discussion. I'm Alan Metcalfe, and you've been watching Conversations on Safe Worlds TV. Stay tuned, there's more to come.